Right. So in the previous class, we were discussing about parathyroid hormone, where it is produced, what are its functions, what does it do in your body, how it is being regulated, what does it regulate, and so on and so forth. Now coming to the next hormone, we have calcitonin. Calcitonin is a peptide hormone and it is secreted by your parafollicular cells, specifically your C cells of your thyroid glands, which are around the follicles, hence the name parafollicular. Now, the regulation of calcitonin will depend on serum calcium levels. Fluctuation in serum calcium levels will govern the amount of calcitonin that is present in your blood and that is being secreted by your parafollicular cells. Okay, so if let us suppose plasma concentration of calcium increases or serum concentration of calcium increases, that is when calcitonin is released. And whenever it is released, it will decrease the amount of serum calcium and it will also decrease. So it is decreasing serum calcium. Let me put it this way. This fellow नहीं तो ऐसा रखेंगे. Whenever there is increase in serum calcium, calcitonin is released, and because of this what happens is serum calcium and phosphates, serum calcium and phosphates, both of them go down. Okay, by its action on kidney and bone. So it will have two different actions. It will have its action on bone and kidney. On the bone, it will inhibit osteoclastic bone resorption. Essentially, if osteoclasts are not working, or if they are being inhibited, or that resorption activity is being inhibited, bones will not get resorbed. If bones are not getting resorbed, it means that calcium will stay intact inside the bone. Osteoclasts are responsible for chipping away the bone and remodeling the bone, essentially breaking the bone so that components of bone can come into your blood. The main components of your bone or from your osteon will be calcium and phosphates. If you stop the process of resorption, you'll not be able to put any calcium, or you'll not be able to send any calcium towards the blood and phosphates. So essentially it is inhibiting that, the first function. Secondly, on your kidneys, it reduces calcium and phosphate reabsorption. So in your kidneys, a reabsorption of calcium and phosphate occur, through which they are being reabsorbed back into your blood and into your body. If that reabsorption is stopped, it indirectly means that more amount of calcium and phosphate is being excreted out of your body in urine. ठीक है, that is the second way through which it will decrease serum calcium and phosphate. Essentially, calcitonin will do the opposite of PTH. ठीक है, they work in opposition essentially. ठीक है. Now, calcitonin is specifically used to control hypercalcemia in your body. You can use calcitonin as a drug in case of Paget's disease. So this is a Paget's bone disease. Essentially, what happens in it is there will be disruption in the replacement of old bone tissue. Okay, old bone tissue will not be replaced properly with new bone tissue, and mainly occurs in pelvis, skull, spine, and legs. So anyway, whenever this replacement of old bone tissue is required, you can use calcitonin. Whenever you want to prevent the replacement of old bone tissue with new bone tissue, then you can use. Excessive is also bad. So excessive rehab, agar excessive osteoclastic activity is present, then you can use calcitonin. You can use it in metastatic bone cancers, osteoporosis, okay, and also to increase bone mineral density. Sometimes bones will become very brittle, not because of any disease, but it can be related to a disease, but because there is not enough amount of calcitonin either being secreted by your body, or there is not enough amount of calcium that is being deposited into your bones, making the bones much more brittle and, how should I put it, less dense. So to increase mineral density, you are using calcitonin as a supplement in this scenario. Now, the drugs that can influence calcium balance in your blood will include calcium, obviously, phosphorus. The amount of phosphorus will affect the amount of serum calcium in your blood as well. Vitamin D, very very important. अगर vitamin D present है तो it will facilitate absorption of calcium. It will stimulate calcium and phosphate absorption in your intestine, and it will also mobilize calcium from your bone to promote, osteoclastic activity. Anyway, by increasing reabsorption of calcium from your kidney, and by increasing the absorption of calcium from your intestines, vitamin D has a positive effect on the amount of calcium present in your blood and in your body in general. Okay. uh, Also calcitonin, that also affects your calcium density. Now coming to drugs that can be used in bone disorders, so rickets hai ya osteomalacia hai, all of those. mm, there are four essentially. Technically, there are three different drugs. You have bisphosphonates, then there is raloxifene, and then there is vitamin D. Now, first coming to bisphosphonates, iska most common example is alendronate. Sorry, alendronate. Alendronate, pamidronate, etidronate, risedronate, all of these are bisphosphonate drugs. These will inhibit bone resorption. The mechanism of action is that they inhibit bone resorption. Essentially, they will end up strengthening the bone. Okay. Bisphosphonates essentially are taken up by your bone matrix. They will enter your osteon and they will get imbibed into osteoclasts. Once they are getting imbibed into osteoclasts, they will inhibit osteoclastic activity. And specifically, they will inhibit the activity of osteoclast in bone resorption. It will reduce bone resorption by literally stopping osteoclastic activity so that your bones are not brittle. स्पेसिफिकली ये कौन से कंडीशंस में देते? ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस, हाइपरकैल्सीमिया, पैजेट्स डिजीज, वो कंडीशंस में बिस्फॉस्फोनेट्स देते. हाइपरकैल्सीमिया में इसलिए देते क्योंकि इफ bone resorption is excessive or osteoclastic activity is excessive, it will chip away the bone and throw it into blood, right? So you are essentially stopping the activity of bone resorption in order to decrease the calcium levels in your blood. That is another way in which you can give. Paget's disease may bone become weak because of excessive reabsorption, even in osteoporosis. So in both of those conditions, you can use bisphosphonates as well. Then raloxifene is technically an SERM. It's a selective estrogen receptor modulator. We studied about this in this thing, contraceptives and all. Uh, this is specifically useful in postmenopausal osteoporosis. Very very helpful in postmenopausal osteoporosis. Essentially, it will prevent postmenopausal osteoporosis because it is a estrogen receptor modulator. It will modulate that receptor. It will essentially stimulate the estrogen receptors, and you already know that estrogen has a protective function on bone. It will make sure that bone density is good, and it will make sure that more and more calcium is being deposited into bone, which is why after menopause generally it is recommended that women take some supplementation of estrogen, or they definitely take calcium and vitamin D supplementation. This is because estrogen's protective activity is gone. In that scenario, you would need to supplement the function of estrogen in one way or the other. Either give vitamin D and calcium, or you give estrogen supplement altogether, like raloxifene. Vitamin D, just promotes calcium absorption and all of that, so that remains the same. These are the three drugs that are used in common disorders of bone deforming disorders specifically. Now, coming to the next class of drugs that you have, which will involve thyroid supplements and antithyroid drugs both. So, if we talk about thyroid supplements, before talking about thyroid supplements, see, thyroid thyroid gland essentially secretes two main hormones. Okay, there's another one hormone as well, but there are two main hormones, which is T3 and T4. Now calcitonin will be released by your parafollicular cell, but abhi ke liye usko bazu laga. Iodine is mainly required for T3 and T4, plays a very important role. Without iodine you cannot produce T3 and T4. Okay. In the synthesis of T3 and T4 from thyroid follicles, you need a lot of iodine. Essentially what happens is whenever thyroid level or thyroid hormone levels decreases in your blood, there will be a stimulus to hypothalamus, or whenever your body wants to produce T3 and T4, hypothalamus gets stimulated. This hypothalamus will in turn stimulate your pituitary using TRH. Any guesses what is TRH?
Releasing
Releasing hormone.
Thyroid releasing hormone या thyrotropin releasing hormone? एक बार चेक करके बोलो मेरे को. So TRH is released towards anterior pituitary. This in turn releases TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, which stimulates, well, thyroid, and thyroid in turn produces T3 and T4. That is how the cycle goes. Okay, whenever there is excessive amounts of T3 and T4, specifically circulating thyroid hormone will be T4, which will be converted into T3 in at a cellular level. You will find that most of your circulating thyroid enzyme is T4, thyroid hormone, sorry, and most of the activity of thyroid is taken up by T3. So the metabolically active form is T3, but the circulatory form is T4. Remember that in blood you'll find very little amount of T3. You'll mainly find T4. In cells you'll mainly find T3 because T3 is the one that is presenting the function of thyroid or causing the function of thyroid. Now normally the daily secretion of T3 is about 15 to 30 micrograms per day. Okay, this every day your body, your thyroid gland is secreting about 30 to 15 to 30 micrograms a year, mcg, and the T4 amount will be somewhere in between 70 to 90, same microgram mcg. Okay, in peripheral tissues T4 will get converted to T3. Now T3 and T4 are required for normal growth, for all thyroid functions, which will include normal growth, development, function and maintenance of body cells. So you can understand that if there is hypothyroidism or if there is any deficiency of T3 and T4, especially in children, congenital deficiency causes cretinism. Ever heard of or seen cretinism, patients of cretinism? They will have abnormal features, abnormal growth. Their body size will be abnormal growth, as in not excessive, it will be very less. And their organs will not grow properly, digestion में problem hota, skin will be weird, and all of that. A lot of problems, especially related to growth. They'll not be able to eat properly. Now, because T3 and T4 are, affecting, or they are causing thyroid effects, they will increase your BMR. So in a normal human, other than growth, they are also responsible for BMR. What is BMR?
Basal metabolic rate.
Yes, they will increase your basal metabolic rate, the rate at which your body is metabolizing food, drugs, or whatever you put into your body, essentially. It will stimulate carbohydrate and protein metabolism, and it will cause fat breakdown. So it will also facilitate erythropoiesis. So in patients who have hypothyroidism, you can see that they might be affected by anemia as well. Okay, or at least their RBC level might be lower than normal. हो सकता. Not necessary, but it can happen because thyroid does have an effect on erythropoiesis. It is required for normal CNS functioning, for normal functioning of your skeletal muscles, cardiovascular system, reproductive system, on your GIT especially. It will facilitate, because it is facilitating increasing BMR. It is producing a positive effect on your GIT. It will facilitate digestion. So you will see that patients who have hypothyroidism, they will have constipation, and patients who have hyperthyroidism, they will have diarrhea. Okay, so you can see both the spectra. hypothyroidism patients will have constipation. Hyperthyroidism patients will have diarrhea. It is not necessary they'll have it, but if they are presenting with GIT symptoms, generally those will be the ones. Now, if you do give thyroid supplements, in specifically I'm talking about hypothyroidism, patients who have hypothyroidism, unke andar the treatment hypothyroidism, because of whatever reason, whether they have cretinism or they have a problem in their thyroid gland, whatever that might be the case, you are giving a supplement of T3 and T4. Okay. Now these T3 T4 will essentially act on the receptor in your nucleus. Okay. These are intranuclear receptors. So if you remember, long ago I told you receptors are present not only on the surface of the cell, but they can be present also inside the cell, which is intracellular receptors. Now mainly intracellular receptors will be present on your nucleus. Very rarely you will see it anywhere else. Okay. Because they are acting on nucleus, they will directly cause changes in your nucleus and protein production immediately. They can be a little more potent also in ways that are desirable as well as non-desirable, but anyway, that is a different discussion. T3 and T4 essentially, because they stimulate your thyroid receptors in your nucleus, uh, they those receptors almost like steroid receptors. Okay. Steroid receptors will also do a similar function. They will act on the nucleus. Now, when do you use thyroid supplements? You can use thyroid supplements in case of replacement therapy. You can use it in case of cretinism. You can use it in case of let's suppose myxedema हो रहा, hypothyroidism in adults, or myxedema coma. Okay. Myxedema coma is a special type of coma because induced because of hypothyroidism. Thyroid carcinoma में दे सकते हैं आप. You can give it in myxedema is something that will occur in advanced hypothyroidism. It will not occur in early stages, but myxedema coma and myxedema essentially is a condition that will occur in very advanced condition. If the patient is not able to regularly take supplements, or they never had, access to supplements altogether. So whatever drug you give, it will act as a supplement for T3 and T4. It will go and stimulate those receptors. Generally, आप क्या करते हैं? Synthetic form of hormone देते हैं patient को. Who have hypothyroidism, T3 and T4 ka synthetic form. You can use it in non-toxic goiter. Non-toxic goiter is essentially enlargement of your thyroid gland. This enlargement, it is not because of an inflammatory condition or a neoplastic process. It's not cancer per se. Uh, it isn't associated with abnormal thyroid function either. Thyroid non-toxic goiter is a very special condition. I'll discuss about it some other day, but you can use it in non-toxic goiter. Essentially what will happen is there will be diffuse and nodular enlargement of your thyroid gland. Then you can use it also in infertility में use कर सकते हैं. कभी कभी patients will have infertility because of hypothyroidism, because it affects your reproductive system. You can use it in refractory anemias as well. So refractory anemia is a type of anemia in which your marrow blood cells fail to mature. Thyroid glands are required for maturity of your marrow cells. So जो trophoblast, not trophoblast, your how should I put it? वो लोग क्या बोलते हैं, तो प्रीकर्सर सेल्स जो रहते हैं उन लोगों के मेच्योरेशन के लिए you need thyroid hormones. Without thyroid hormones, those precursor cells will not mature, and if they do not mature, you will not see the function of erythropoiesis. That will lead to refractory anemia. Hence, that is why I told you, without T3 T4, you can have anemia, or T3 T4 will influence erythropoiesis. So in case of refractory anemias, these are low risk anemias, but they can occur. मोनोलिजिएज जो सेल्स रहते हैं, उसकी डिस्प्लेसिया होने लगती. So in those patients they will have dyserythropoiesis, low percentage of blasts in your bone marrow, and and in your peripheral blood. So in that scenario you can give T3 T4 supplementation. Then coming to hyperthyroidism, hypothyroidism is straightforward treatment. You give a supplement of thyroid and that's it. Hyperthyroidism, Now this can be because of multiple reasons. Essentially, there is excessive amount of thyroid hormone being produced. Now, when there is excessive amount of thyroid hormone being produced, it can be because of various causes, but the most common cause is an autoimmune disorder called Graves' disease. Graves' disease is an autoimmune disorder in which the patient will have diffuse goiter, they will have hyperthyroidism, they will have IgG antibodies. Okay, uh, especially that IgG antibodies will activate TSH receptors. Because TSH receptors are being activated, your thyroid in turn will start stimulating, or it will start producing more and more amount of T3 T4. That is why hyperthyroid is occurring. Okay, there are specific antibodies that will activate TSH receptors. TSH receptors which are present on your thyroid gland, which should respond to TSH normally. TSH is being released by your anterior pituitary, because of which you are, its stimulus is presented on thyroid gland, which in turn leads to T3, T4 production. Now, there are antibodies being produced which are stimulating your TSH receptors, which can lead to Graves' disease, which is Graves' disease essentially. Now, there are multiple drugs that can be used. There are two main classes of drugs that can be used in hyperthyroidism, or two main types of drugs. There are other causes of hyperthyroidism as well. Drug-induced resecta. It can be because of certain chemo. Yeah, where it can be. There are multiple reasons, but the most common one is that anti-immune disorder, autoimmune disorder, Graves' disease. First type of drug that you can give is direct antithyroid drugs. ठीक है, एंटीथायराइड ड्रग्स में एक क्लास आती है which is called thiionamides. They're also called thiourenins. Now, these drugs, there are three main drugs that will fall under this: propyl thiouracil, methimazole, and carbimazole. Though propyl thiouracil is used most common. PTU बोलते हैं उसको. Propyl thiouracil. This is the most commonly used. PTU. Okay. Uh, Other drugs will be drugs that will inhibit hormone release. Okay, they will include iodine or iodides or radioactive iodine. I'll explain how it will work. Now, first coming to propyl thiouracil, methimazole, and carbimazole, essentially they will decrease the synthesis of thyroid hormones. Propyl thiouracil specifically, it will inhibit peripheral conversion of T3 to T4. This fellow will inhibit T3 to T4 conversion. ये नहीं होने देता, sorry, T4 to T3 conversion. This has stopped. Okay, so essentially it is stopping this process. Okay, there's an inhibitory effect on peripheral conversion of T4 to T3, and as a result what will happen is T4 and T3, both their levels will start going down eventually. Now, large doses might in turn cause the stimulation of TSH, so you have to be careful when you're using this, because it works on a negative feedback loop. Thyroid hormones will work on a negative feedback loop. Whenever there is less amount of T3 present in your cells, uh, this in turn will lead a stimulus to your brain, which will cause stimulus to your TSH. TSH in turn will stimulate your thyroid to produce even more amount of T3 and T4. So that is how normal mechanism works. Now, in case of hyperthyroidism, you already have excessive amounts of T4 and T3, specifically T4. So normally it should not have a problem, it should not be a problem. But if you give an excessive dose of propyl thiouracil, there will be a negative effect, in the sense that instead of decreasing T3 T4, it will increase T3 T4 levels by stimulating that negative feedback mechanism. So you have to be careful when you are using propyl thiouracil. I'll repeat that point once again, listen carefully. Normally what is happening, agar let's suppose on your peripheral tissue, T4 is getting converted into T3, and this T3 is present inside your cell. Okay, At one point after the usage of several molecules of T3, this level will go down. Okay? And it will lead to a stimulus of your hypothalamus anterior pituitary, which will in turn release TSH. TSH is stimulating your thyroid gland to produce T4. Okay? T3 and T4, but T4 mainly. Now, in case of hyperthyroidism, there is already excessive amount of T3 and T4, especially T4. Okay? In case of hyperthyroidism, there is too much amount of T4. And in this, at this point, let's suppose you use PTU, propylthiouracil. Okay? This fellow will inhibit this process. It will inhibit conversion of T4 to T3. So T4 will start getting, will remain in your body as is. Most of the T4 will get inhibited. So the conversion will essentially not completely stop, but it will slow down. Meaning the same amount of T4 will last in your body for a longer period of time. If it's lasting for a longer period of time, your body will stop producing as much amount of T4 because it works on a negative feedback loop. अगर T3 कम हुआ, जब भी there is a negative feedback. This is the negative feedback. ठीक है, कम हुआ तो बनाएंगे बोल के. Okay, so if the conversion rate of T4 to T3 is decreased, T4 will stay in your blood for a longer period of time. Here the problem is excessive amount of T4, hyperthyroidism, keep that in mind. So T4 levels are already high. If you give a drug that is making sure that T4 stays that way for a while that conversion of T4 to T3 is slowed down, what will happen is no more amount of T3 is T3 and T4 will be secreted by a thyroid. Now, if you give excessive dose of PTU, what will happen is it will in turn start stimulating TSH even more, because over time अगर PTU का dose बहुत ज़्यादा दे दिया आप, this effect with the negative effect of PTU will last for a very long period of time. ठीक है, more than normal. At that point, what will happen is T3 levels will significantly go down, and that might lead to a hypothyroidism like reaction, because of which negative feedback will get stimulated again. अगर negative feedback stimulate हो गया तो TSH will again get stimulated and it will start producing T4. So that is the problem, excessively. So make sure that you give PTU only in a set normal dose. Therapeutic dose के थोड़ा भी ऊपर दिए तो it will cause more harm than advantage or than benefit. So be careful with that. I hope you understood this negative feedback loop कैसा काम कर रहा. PTU नॉर्मल डोज दिया तो प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, एक्सेसिव डोज दिया तो नेगेटिव फीडबैक मैकेनिज्म को उन्हें फीड करता, एंड एज अ रिजल्ट और नेगेटिव फीडबैक मैकेनिज्म is stimulated even more, and that will lead to excessive stimulation of thyroid, leading to more amount of hormone being released. Now the actions of PTU or any thioureline drug, it will take about 3 to 4 weeks. It is a slow acting drug. Okay, over 3 to 4 weeks of treatment, 3 to 4 weeks of treatment, you will see that their signs and symptoms of hyperthyroidism starts to subside. Okay, in general propylthiouracil is slightly better and fast acting than carbimazole, but carbimazole is longer acting, so each have their own disadvantages. Another thing, carbimazole is a prodrug of methimazole. Okay, so you can use that point as well. Methimazole is, carbimazole being the prodrug of methimazole, carbimazole gets converted into methimazole. Common adverse effects that will occur with this are allergic reactions. The patient can have jaundice, headache. जॉन्डिस इसलिए हो रहा बिकॉज मेटाबॉलिज्म इज डिक्रीजिंग, हाइपरथायरॉयडिज्म की वजह से देयर वाज ओवर स्टिमुलेशन टू all the growth factors, to your BMR, to everything, right? When you give something like propylthiouracil or carbimazole, methimazole, you are essentially decreasing rate of metabolism as well. So to an extent, indirectly, you are also decreasing the rate at which bile is being excreted out of your body. That can lead to jaundice. It can cause headache. Rarely, it can cause a very severe reaction called agranulocytosis. Agranulocytosis. What are agranulocytes? अच्छा, what are granulocytes? WBC की classification क्या है? What are the types of WBCs and what are agranulocytes? Hmm? अच्छा, do you remember basophils, neutrophils and eosinophils? कभी पढ़े थे ना उसके बारे में?
Yes, sir.
अच्छा,
Yes, sir.
तो why are they called basophils, eosinophils and neutrophils? थोड़ा सोचो. आप जब पढ़े थे उनका रीजन आप आई एम श्योर आप लोग द रीजन व्हाई दे आर कॉल्ड न्यूट्रोफिल्स, बेसोफिल्स एंड एसिनोफिल्स वाज आल्सो मेंशन्ड. Eosinophils are also called acidophils. अरे बाप रे. WBC are classified into granulocytes and agranulocytes. Granulocytes will contain specific type of granules. Hence, neutrophils will have neutral granules. Eosinophils will have acidic granules. Yes, granulocytes may granules present रहते. Correct. So, depending on the type of granule they have, they'll either be classified into neutral granules, basic granules, or acidic granules. Okay, those are granulocytes. Now there are other types of WBC other than granulocytes, right? अगर मैं neutrophils, basophils and eosinophils or acidophils को निकाल दिया, what are the other types of WBC? There are two more important types.
Leukocytes.
Leukocyte is another name for WBC. Lymphocyte. Hmm. And T cell is a type of lymphocyte, ma. Yeah, Akshara. Raise your hand. Yep, monocytes. Now, these do not have any granules. So what should they be called?
Agranules.
Granules.
One second. This is the basic classification of WBCs. I hope you remember this. Okay. Leukocyte and WBC are the same thing. Please do not get confused in between them. WBCs are classified into granulocytes and agranulocytes. Let me put it this way. Hello. Okay. Agranulocytes will include lymphocytes and monocytes, in which you will have T cells and B cells. Now, if you want to get into a little more detail, T cells are of three more types: T helper cells, T suppressor cells, or T regulatory cells. B cells are of plasma B cells. And what is the second type of B cell? There'll be another type, no? Technically, there is another type of T cell also, but think. लास्ट ईयर अपन लोग इम्यूनो केमिस्ट्री में पढ़े थे ये पूरा. Memory B cells, the cells that will make sure that you have memory of different antigens that are coming into your body. Plasma cells will be responsible for immunoglobulin production. You will have memory T cells as well. So anyway, this is something very basic. Try to recall it every now and then. ठीक है? नहीं तो भूल जाते. This is very basic and something that you have to remember. Now anyway, granulocytosis. Yeah, agranulocytosis. What does that mean? What does the term cytosis mean? I was only able to hear some sound. I wasn't able to make out anything. Can you repeat that or put it in the chat? What does cytosis mean? Increase in number. ठीक है. Agranulocytosis means there is increase in the number of agranulocytes. Agranulocytopenia means decrease in agranulocytes. Leukocytosis means all the different types of WBCs are increasing in number, generally seen in infection. Leukocytopenia is a condition in which WBC levels are decreasing. So cytosis is increase in number, penia is the opposite. ठीक है. Whenever there is cytosis, number increase होता. Whenever there is penia, number decrease होता. Correspondingly, you will have erythrocytosis, erythrocytopenia, thrombocytosis, thrombocytopenia, or pancytosis, pancytopenia. ठीक है. So now in case of giving thiourenes, sometimes, very rarely, a major reaction will occur, which is agranulocytosis. That is a very severe reaction. Okay, so it will only happen in 0.1% cases. Now, in anticipation of agranulocytosis, what you have to do is, when you are giving thyroid supplements, sorry, thyroid suppressing drugs like thionamides or thiourenes, वो condition में you have to frequently perform WBC counts. If the patient presents with any symptoms of agranulocytosis, immediately stop the drug. Okay. These drugs can also cause arthralgia. They can cause myalgia, so joint and muscle pain. They can also cause lymphadenopathy. Okay. So those are some of the side effects of this thiourenes. Normally, you use them in Graves' disease, toxic nodular goiter. You can use them preoperatively to decrease the metabolic rate. You can use it in pregnancy. Hyperthyroidism happens in some pregnant women. उसमें दे सकते हैं आप. You can use it in something called thyroid storm. T4 T3 levels बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ जाते हैं, and the patient will generally go into coma. It will rapidly increase. ठीक है, thyroid storm में. तो आप वो condition में दे सकते हैं. It will be slightly slow acting, but it will work. You can give it in thyrotoxic crisis as well. Thyrotoxic crisis and thyroid storm are technically the same thing. Now, coming to drugs that will inhibit hormone release, iodines, iodides, or radioactive iodine, whatever you use. Now, iodides, essentially they will inhibit the release of thyroid hormones T3, T4, and when you are giving this drug in thyrotoxic patients, the symptoms will subside within 1 to 2 days. Now, what happens is the gland becomes very firm. The thyroid gland becomes very firm and less vascular, shrinks in size over a period of 10 to 14 days. So essentially, it is decreasing the number of cells, iodine. Okay? Even though iodine is important for T3, T4 production, when you give it as a drug, थोड़ा change करके देते हैं आप. ठीक है, there is excessive effect of iodine, and in turn it will stop the function of thyroid hormones temporarily. Iodides generally are administered orally. You give Lugol's iodine, yeah, potassium iodide solution. You give 3 drops 3 times a day, and that will work. Normally, those iodides, the iodine especially, which is being given, will get converted into iodides in your intestine. Okay, which in that intestine it will get absorbed. Now, normally, this will cause allergic reactions. The most common problem with iodides are allergic reactions. स्किन रैशेस हो सकते हैं, एलर्जिक रिएक्शन होते हैं. थोड़े पेशेंट्स में देयर विल बी स्वेलिंग ऑफ लिप्स एंड स्वेलिंग ऑफ this thing salivary glands. So this the salivary glands might become a little painful. Conjunctivitis हो सकता, fever हो सकता. ठीक है. If there is chronic overdosage of iodism, as in chronic overdosage, it will cause the condition called iodism. Iodism may the patient will have excessive salivation, a lacrimation. There will be a this thing, क्या बोलते हैं, cholinergic reaction. Essentially, the patients will have burning sensation in their oral cavity and throat. There will be runny nose, sore throat. They'll have headache. They'll have excessive lacrimation. A lot of problems. So be careful when you're using this. You can use iodine in case of before operation. Pre-operatively you can give, especially pre-operatively for thyroidectomy. Okay. Before removing a part of thyroid, in some patients with thyroid hyperthyroidism, drugs might not work as well. So आप surgery करके a little part of the thyroid is removed. In that scenario, you can give this pre-operatively. Generally, iodine is started 10 days before the surgery. Essentially, what will happen is thyroid gland will become firm and less vascular. So performing the surgery will be slightly easier. आप thyroid storm में use कर सकते हैं. You can use it prophylactically to prevent endemic goiter. Patients who have hyperthyroidism, they have the risk of developing goiter. So in those patients, you can use iodine therapeutically. Other than thyroid, you can use iodine as an antiseptic agent as well. Okay, so there is that use of thyroid. Now, so though that is about hyperthyroidism, now you'll also have radioactive iodine, and uh, it will have some disadvantages associated with it, especially there is a risk of thyroid carcinoma itself. So it is you know uh, disadvantageous in its own way, but sometimes radioactive iodine is also useful, um, especially surgery कर रहे जब it's you can avoid surgery if you are able to give radioactive iodine. But again, when you are giving radioactive iodine as treatment, there is chance of cancer itself, thyroid carcinoma हो सकता because it is radioactive. Sometimes beta blockers देते, beta adrenergic blockers in hyperthyroidism, especially propranolol, because a lot of symptoms of hyperthyroidism will be because of sympathetic overactivity. ठीक है, तो जो palpitation, tremors, nervousness, sweating, myopathy, ये पूरे जो होते हैं थायराइड के साथ, वो पूरे आप कम कर सकते हैं by giving beta blockers. It's not direct treatment, but just for symptomatic relief it will work. Okay, so you have one small topic left in this thing, prostaglandins. We'll cover that and then the unit will be over. So prostaglandins we've discussed already. अपन लोग NSAIDs में भी पढ़े थे, last year भी पढ़े थे prostaglandins के बारे में. You have prostaglandins which is synthesized from arachidonic acid, gets converted into PGs if it is subjected to COX1 or COX2 cyclooxygenase. Your NSAIDs will block this. Okay. Leukotrienes will convert, lipooxygenase, LOX, will convert it into leukotrienes, LT. Right. So depending on what is acting and what is more, cyclooxygenase or lipooxygenase, the amount of prostaglandins or leukotrienes might increase. Now, cyclooxygenase, when it acts on this thing, a small amount of thromboxanes are also formed. TXA2 specifically. Okay. Thromboxane A2 is a vasoconstrictor. It will also induce platelet aggregation, very helpful in case of coagulation. Okay. Now prostaglandins are of multiple types. You can have PGE1, E2, D2, F2, I2, multiple types के रहते, and they will have different functions. For example, if we take PGE2, it will contract your gastrointestinal tract and your bronchial smooth muscles. The smooth muscles present in your GIT and your smooth muscles of your bronchi. Prostaglandin E2, D2, and F2 will contract your uterus. So PGE2 smooth muscles of GIT and bronchi are contracted or constricted. Constrict लिखेंगे, ठीक है. PGD2, F2 and E2 contract uterus, facilitate labor. Generally, these are released around the time of parturition. PGI2 is a vasodilator. ठीक है. It will also inhibit platelet aggregation. Now, where do you use prostaglandins? If you want to induce abortion, now it is not legal, but at one point of time to induce abortion or to facilitate labor, essentially it is facilitating labor. Depending on where you're using it, it will either become an abortifacient or it will become an agent that can facilitate parturition itself. Okay. Some patients will not have enough amount of prostaglandins being released during their labor, so their labor will go on for a long period of time. You will see every now and then you will see a few cases in which women will be in labor for almost a day, 2 days, or 3 days. It can happen. So in those patients, up you can give this thing. Generally, you wait till the cervix is dilated properly. That is when parturition will occur. But sometimes it will not be a problem in the cervix, but it will be a problem in the amount of prostaglandins being released. तो in that scenario आप ये दे सकते हैं. To prime the cervix, you can give it. You're essentially priming it. You're making your cervix ready for parturition. To decrease postpartum hemorrhage, helpful. It will maintain patency of your ductus arteriosus, especially in, I mean, patency as an openness. ये किस में काम आता? Fetus में. What is ductus arteriosus? इसके बारे में लास्ट ईयर हार्ट में पढ़े थे होंगे आप लोग. There is a hole in the fetal heart which will connect your right atrium to your left atrium. याद है? उसको ductus arteriosus बोलते हैं essentially. Let me know what is the function of what ductus arteriosus. Anyway, you have to keep that open, okay? It is by design. It is not a problem in a person's heart. In fetus, it should be open. After birth, it will close. Now, maintaining the patency or the openness of the ductus arteriosus is done by prostaglandins. They will also prevent platelet aggregation. स्पेशली इन केस ऑफ PUD एंड ग्लोकोमा बहुत हेल्पफुल रहते हैं प्रोस्टाग्लैंडिन्स. ठीक है. ग्लोकोमा, you have glaucoma later on as well. I will get into the details of glaucoma in the next chapter. You have it in the 10th chapter. But glaucoma is essentially a condition in which aqueous humor will start getting accumulated in the person's eye. So IOP increases, intraocular pressure increases a lot and start damaging the structures of your eye. तो उसमें prostaglandins यूज कर सकते हैं आप. You can also use it in PUD. In case of PUD, if you remember, prostaglandins are helping in stimulation of mucus production as well as production of bicarbonates. ठीक है. Bicarbonates are a direct counter to HCl. Will counter HCl. Mucus will act as a protecting agent around your stomach lining against HCl. So it has protective effects in your stomach. So that is another place where PUD is indicated. Sorry, prostaglandins is indicated. So that is about prostaglandin essentially. Like as I told you, very very small topic. And with that we have completed your 8th unit as well. So आप लोगों को एक काम करेंगे.